up, everybody, to another episode of Durable by Design. I'm here with Chris B.
What's up?
And we're talking about all the things service companies or agencies need. This series we're doing is why service companies are bad, or as Crispy says,
Why service companies suck.
Okay. So here's with the next one. Why do you think service companies suck?
Yeah, a couple topics for today. One is you are your last customer. So one of the pain points that I dealt with specifically is you spend all your time delivering work for your customers, and not so much in the sense of like working on your own business, which is hard because it means your own processes are just fucked beyond belief. And your stack is just bad. Your CRM is likely, if you had to take all the CRMs from every HubSpot account that you have access to, your agency's is probably the worst.
Play devil's advocate, and we both run agencies. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You say it's why, like, this is why, I'd say what's preventing you from scaling, right? And what should you do instead? I mean, like, is it really? All right. I'll give you something just talk to me. Is it really that big of an issue? And if it is, why? What would you do about it? What did you do about it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned like the problem is scaling. I think the problem is you're your last customer. The impact is you can't scale. And the solution is the 10% rule, as we like to call it, where you should spend 10% of your week working on the business if you're a founder or C-suite or someone who has great influence in the business. This allows you to do lots of things that have long-lasting impact. So things like standardizing the way you're delivering services, working on better service offerings, training team members, optimizing the way that you're running the business top to bottom in many different facets and areas. But generally, stick to the 10% rule. I would argue you should do the same thing with content generation, like creating content and spending dedicated time to do it. Most successful founders that I've seen in the ecosystem have dedicated, crafted time to working on content for their business or around their own brand, and it pays dividends massively.
So I agree with this idea that you're often your last customer. Because you're your last customer, it prevents you from scaling.
Yep.
I agree with that idea, and the solution is work on your business. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the issue I have with it. Not actually, because when I was going around talking, is it's really hard to know what to freaking prioritize. Mm. And I live in this mentality. And I would combine this. I would put this advice, because you're an agency, and it's great. It's like, great, okay, I need to do it. But it actually creates a lot of anxiety. I'd be like, because you feel like you never get to work on something. And here's the reality is everything is manual until it's too painful not to be manual. And I would put litmus test do it manual. And so here's I'm going to combine it, because there's the other thing, and this isn't a scale, but I would call it with it, because people hear that advice and then that's wisdom that's created through pain. So you have to go through the pain. Mm-hmm. And what Crispy's really saying, in my opinion, when I hear you, it is don't not work on the business. But don't be ashamed if you're your last customer. So, and so let's give some practical examples. Do not automate before it needs to be automated. So we used to send out yearly gifts and for all our clients, and we would send out a yearly gift, and it was manual as AF. It was we would handwrite notes, and we would send them out, and I literally we sent little toy green cars to people, because we were we were racing and machines. And I went to I ordered some, but mostly I found them at Walmart, and I had to go buy them. And it did that for about 2 years. Well, let's say 2. We did it year 1, and it was so painful, but it worked so freaking good. In year 2, we learned we couldn't afford to do that again, and so we had to prioritize, and we did it. And we created a process around it. You must first do the thing before you automate it. And so if your CRM data is bad, who cares unless you have a question to answer? Who freaking cares? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I need to send an automated email to everybody. Yes, you do. Why don't you just do it manual first? Yeah. So when I do it, you can have that mindset to everything, and there will be a point in time, in 10%, when you can hire around it, but like there are stages to growth, and you can't run towards maturity if you first haven't gone through infancy. You cannot skip the pain and suffering. Just go get some pain and suffering. It will make you will know what you need it. You need it. So
Yeah.
Yes, and is what I guess you hear me saying.
Yeah, and I think you answered it kind of indirectly as well, in the sense of how do you know where to start? And I think what you mentioned is you can quantify pain is the short of what it is, because you mentioned you were doing this manually 1 year. The next year you realized we can't afford to do this, right? And so you can quantify pain in multiple ways. You can quantify pain to a dollar amount, right? You can also quantify pain to like time spent. That is also painful. And so if you can put time or revenue back in the business, that is the exact measurement that I would use to prioritize the things that I should work on in the business. If this is severely impacting my revenue performance and it's opportunity cost for me, or it's wasted time spent here and there, you can quantify that, stack rank it, and there's your list that you should work on.
Yep. So if I was to leave people, if you were asking me what to do, I'd say I have absolutely no clue what to do with your business. I do know one thing I live by. You can feel free to not live by this or live by it, which is if you haven't done it first manual, then I do not automate it. Crispy knows this, as we're like I apply this. This transcends every industry. This is one of these laws. Is we're in super. We're doing retention thoughts, and the data is bad. And you know how many. I literally have sales reps like, Matt, aren't you a RevOps expert? I'm like, I don't even know what that means, number one. Yeah. Number two is, well, what about the data? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's almost like, do you know what to focus on and when is probably one of the most important things you should be thinking about as a founder. Always spend time on your business and prioritize where you feel the most pain after you've experienced it, which means you're doing it. And that's what I would leave people with. So.
I'm calling it now. The comments on the post are going to be, well, data drives decisions.
Data drives decisions, period. And you just have to go through build. That's why often agencies are run by people that have done something or built something before, because they've experienced the pain, and so they have some IP on what to skip. But if when you're building a business, you just don't know what the heck you're doing, and you have to go through the pain. And if you optimize too quick, you will kill yourself. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Do not optimize before you first have experienced the pain, because you don't know what you're optimizing for.
Yeah.
This is the issue with AI and some others. Like this becomes like there is no context to why you're doing it. I just like
yes.
You have to suffer.
Yep.
Don't skip it. Don't run from it. And the people who run at it, like Crispy, he runs at suffering. People who run at it and do it faster and iterate more win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You touched on something that I tell to partners constantly, especially like I have a very serious theory about this, and I've had this validated since I've been talking to dozens of partners on a weekly basis now. Is most think that they do RevOps and they're not actually doing RevOps, and the thing that they lack is context on how to discover problems. And most people will try to find solution. They'll do solutions discovery before discovery of full context. And this is what I tell them, in the sense of establish your problem and establish the context first before you get into the why. Because there's likely gray areas in here that will affect your solution after you build it, which creates this vicious cycle of just, you're going to be a hamster on a wheel trying to solve something that you're chasing your tail. It's just going to be an awful experience.
Okay, we're riffing now. You got to get us back after this. I'm going to give you two things. Number one is your next solution is your next problem. And the most common issue I see is people trying to solve their next problem before they've created their next solution. So they're like, just live with it. I'm going to do this process. Like, well, the process is going to break. I'd be like, does it fix my problem today? Then execute. Now, the more experience you get, the longer you do it. But if you think too long, it's like, well, then you're 6 months down the road, nothing's been shipped, and you've lost. Stop it. And number two is knowing what question to ask is more important than knowing how to do. And so these RevOps experts know how to do things, but they don't know when to do them, why to do them, and when not to do the how. And the why matters more. And the why is discovered through what? Pain, suffering, and agglomeration of time.
Yeah.
And effort. Okay, what's the next? What's keeping companies from scaling? So what's the next one?
Yeah. So we talked about you are your last customer, stuff like that. I think one of the natural things that most partners deal with, especially as they go from small scale to like medium and then large eventually, is how to build recurring revenue is a massive one. And I think this is especially interesting now, considering HubSpot's quarterly earnings report and them talking about how the new average for HubSpot customers is 3 hubs, right? And there's a 21% growth in enterprise hubs as well. So as we think about how HubSpot is swimming up market, how do partners design around building longevity and recurring revenue from those types of customers?
I don't know when it's coming out. When we were talking about this, I wrote a whole post about it. I had 14 ways to think about this and how do you go up market, along with some cool reports. It was originally 24, and I had to scale it down for LinkedIn. So LinkedIn said, "Matt, you have too many opinions." I was like, "Man, that hurts, LinkedIn. That was ouch." Okay, so what's keeping people from scaling? And so you asked this question different, which was, I'm going to, in the inverse, is only doing projects, is what you said, right? And so the question becomes okay, what keeps you from scaling is not having the ability to retain clients on reoccurring revenue. So I have this, we must always be thinking theory into practice and practice into theory. So one of these is, okay, why would someone pay you every single month or however the payment schedule, why do they pay you over and over again? And there's only one reason. It's you're having a reoccurring impact, means you're providing value in a reoccurring way. And so when I talk to a service company, I will ask anytime, and they're like, well, I do projects. I'm like, okay, well, how do you create reoccurring impact for your clients? Because reoccurring impact may be then like we'll create the next project. And I'd be crazy. I'm always baffled by how they don't have an answer to how you create reoccurring impact. And that reoccurring impact needs to be thought about. And how do you do it daily? How do you do it weekly? How do you do it monthly? And how do you do it quarterly? And you need answers and the frequency. And then it's baked into your packaging. And then when people buy, they buy value and impact.
Yep.
And it's the same systemized delivery vessel.
Yeah. This echoes kind of what we talk about pretty often, honestly, is the experience is a huge part of that, where, you can have the ability to provide reoccurring value, but it's also about the way that value is delivered on a recurring basis. Because ultimately, especially as you get to this elite tier and beyond, typically you're bidding against the same 4 to 5 other partners, and at that point, the delivery in terms of what the customer is going to get is likely very, very similar, in the sense of they're going to get the same object architecture in the CRM. They're going to get the same assets, the same whatever, right? But the difference between each of these that you're competing against is the experience that they're going to get. And that's what's so important here, is building recurring revenue is about the value that you're providing on an ongoing basis, as well as the experience that the customer gets on that ongoing basis as well. Because if you're providing a wonderful experience that is valuable, they will stay as a customer forever.
Yeah. So how do we make a shift to do a reoccurring? Is I would just ask that question. Yes. By the way, yes.
Yep.
And here's the way I've answered this in the past. Because when we were doing Rev Partners and we created Rev Outside the Service, we did no projects. I said, hey, we will not do a project. And feel free to consider me a project. Because we do month to month, and we have a minimum of 3 months if you start, and you may stay with the 6, and that's a project. But I want you to know this, customer. My mission in life is to make sure you never leave me.
Yeah, you're married.
And I will do, and if you ever feel like you're going to leave me, will you tell me first?
You should have given out rings as Christmas.
Yeah, I'll give out. And just like it's like marriage. And it's so like when people are going through, they're always looking at the same thing. How do I switch from project into from project into to X, it is a the way we did it is we stopped doing as much scoping. We said, hey, we made this statement. There's no way that any project plan I make you, with the limited amount of discovery we're going to do, is going to be able to give you a project plan that I can guarantee. And here's what will happen. I'm going to give you a project plan, and we've already established our relationship poorly. You're going to keep this. You're going to ask for change orders. They're going to increase. You're going to constantly have delays. Your priorities 6 months from now, because guess what? Growth begets complexity, and your current solution is your next problem.
Yep. What
we talked about earlier in this episode. And by 6 months, you will not like me. We'll have a bad relationship. But you're stuck in some kind of contract for this project. And that's how most things end. So we said, how about we skip all of that? And so we went from scope heavy first into methodology heavy first. And the methodology sold. And so my recommendation to people is have a methodology and how you're creating reoccurring impact, and think about that in weekly, monthly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then to have some special thing, like we have the best training out of anyone. We are the best in this industry out of anyone. We have the best method. Like, you have to have something, and you won't win everything, but you'll win 23% of them, and it will be awesome, because everyone else will run out of capacity. You'll win. You'll run out of capacity, and there's just too many deals.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm curious on how you dealt with this. One of the things that I hear from partners a lot, even like today, honestly, is they start with a customer who wants to onboard HubSpot, right, or some hub or some software. Honestly, they scope this in a project that has a definitive start and a definitive end. And what I'm finding is that when the definitive end is here and now, the partner is asking, oh, well, now what? How do we drive recurring revenue? Like, we finished this, so now how do we add value? They question their ability to add value in it. And I have a specific response that I've been telling people to this, but I'm curious on how you did this.
Man, I feel like I'm being set up. I'll tell you how I did it, and then we'll hear the right answer afterwards. So here's how I did this.
Yeah.
I created, but a lot of this is the genesis of Super. So let me hear it. And so we were super methodology heavy, and we got really into like creating standardized delivery vessels through our tool system, which is Super. Then from there, not before there, we started thinking about productizing certain values that I could then give to pods, and they could do it. They could print and press at the same quality level, which is Super. And so here, and it was in my sales process. And here's how we did it: is I would have this map. I say, okay, guys, I've seen you, and they'd be like, no, I'm custom. I'm like, no, you're not. They're like, I ask a question, hey, do you want to grow this fast? Okay, perfect. Like, here's what I've heard you say.
Yeah.
I have a sales pipeline issue I can't forecast. I have to give X to my PE firm. I don't have it like X. And I was like, okay, here's what I've heard you say. And I had this, like, I use Mirrorboard, not Loser Chart, but I use Mirrorboard. And I had 50 projects pre-done, pre-scoped with everything they could ever think. Because I've already done it so many times. Like, whatever it is, you score. And I would say, okay, here's what I've heard you say. And I would go through the problems and just mark. And they were all in order. And they all flowed into each other. They had entry and exit. And I'd say, boop, 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 boop. Okay, I heard 15 problems.
Yeah.
I think the most important ones are these 5. Because I think you have to do these in these order. Do you agree? And they'd say, no, I actually think 1's here. Okay, well, 3, like I can do these 5 in 3 months. And we've already identified 15. That's already about 9 months of work. When do you want to get started? And I already had everything pre-identified for like almost 9 months to 12 months of work. And on like the second call. That's how I did it.
Yeah.
And so we organized everything that way into these things we called epics, and already had some pretty fun.
Yeah, So that my answer is very similar to that. And what I've been telling partners is there's a misconception around thinking that HubSpot is the starting point, or the ending point in a customer's journey. In the sense of there's a project that has a definitive start and a definitive end. And I told them this is part of like solution selling, which is typically like they're not the goal for them is not to onboard HubSpot, and your KPI is not onboard HubSpot, right? Typically their goal is I need to visualize the data of my sales team in order to make better decisions or something like that. And HubSpot's the vessel to do that, right? Typically is the solution, which means that HubSpot is a step in that journey, which is we're going to implement a CRM to train your sales team and have them track blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And then going beyond, and the solution selling piece is like, okay, well, if you're looking at track on your team's performance, have you thought about like a VoIP tool or calling and texting or like connecting your other systems to visualize the data?
Those boxes were sometimes just other partner solutions I added on, and would be another implementation of another tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is the misconception that partners think is like, okay, cool, we're just going to do HubSpot. And like, this is the project and there's an end, which makes it super hard to transition from like project to recurring revenue because you've completed this work. Why do I still need you? Is the customer's viewpoint. Yes. When it's okay, this is the first step in the pathway, which is now we have HubSpot. Let's think about your revenue strategy and your revenue processes and your framework and activating your sales teams and forcing adoption and things like that. And so the mindset needs to change in the sense of this is a journey to build better businesses, and HubSpot is a catalyst to make that happen, to solve this one thing. Whereas, so speaking of sales reps, one's huddling me right now. It's a first step in the journey that leads to a much brighter future that has more value beyond just HubSpot. And this is like, I echo the solution selling standpoint. It's not done in really graceful ways nowadays. It's kind of a lost art, if you will, where people want to be more transactional with their onboarding experience, and that directly impacts like adoption from the get-go. If you're more transactional,
you're making me like come back lots of memories, and I think we'll end here. We'll like land the plane. Is we had this idea where you had to pick 3, and then you had 2 you had options. So you could add another one for $5,000 or like for 15, like whatever. And we never did anything less than starting with $15,000, and you had certain but there was always training adoption was always built in, and you had to do it, and it gave us time. It was built into the end, and so the end was never the building. The end was always training and adoption, which is part of our experience that we sold. And we beat I won a lot of deals because I actually built that into the project plan, and period. So let's recap. We talked about 2 things that kept us, which is number 1 is you were our last customer, so it's hard to scale because we're not working on the business. With the caveat of you should do things manual and then focus on the largest pain currently, and always be making some kind of progress towards it. And number 2 is it is really difficult to scale if you have no reoccurring impact packages inside of your service company. You have to have reoccurring, and to do that, focus on reoccurring impact. And we talked about how to think about that process. Okay, Crispy. Why do you have long hair?
I don't know. It's part of like COVID happened and I grew it out, and it became part of my branding, and so I kept it ever since. I feel like, I thought about this last night actually. I was like, it'd be cool to have like a thing in inbound where it's like the partner that has the best pitch can like shave my head or something. I was like,
boom, we heard it here. Crispy is shaving his head for the partner. Instead of winning, they're winning $10,000 and Crispy's hair.
Yep.
You're gonna shave it. Love it, and a picture with it. Okay, Crispy, thank you for making that promise to the world. Everybody, stay awesome, keep doing it big, and never stop blue. Bye, everybody.